Damian used to say. I don't hate gay people, I just don't get them. Which, if you've ever been the only openly gay guy in a small logistics office in Ohio, you know is basically the polite version of, I hate gay people. The first time he said it, we were in the break room. I was microwaving leftover pasta, and he was standing there with his protein shake, built like he'd been assembled in a gym factory. Broad shoulders, thick forearms, that permanent 5 o'clock shadow that made him look older than 30. Someone on the news was talking about Pride Month. Damian snorted. Why do they need a whole month? Nobody's giving me a straight month. I didn't even look at him. Just stirred my pasta and said, You've had about 2,000 years, man. I think you're good. He laughed at that, but it wasn't friendly. It was that short, sharp laugh people do when they're trying to hide they're irritated. From that point on, it was tension. Not loud arguments. Not HR-level drama. Just this constant, low hum. He'd make comments. Not slurs, not anything I could report. Just little digs. Bet the guys at that club love you, huh, Donovan? You're not into me, are you? He'd joke in front of the others. Relax, I'm just messing around. And I'd roll my eyes and keep it moving. I'd been out since I was 19. I'd heard worse. Way worse. But here's the thing. For someone who didn't get gay people, Damian paid a lot of attention to me. He always sat across from me during team lunches. Always ended up next to me during meetings. If I wore a fitted shirt, I'd catch his eyes flicking down and then snapping back up like he touched a hot stove. I told myself I was imagining it. I had a type. Tall. Dark hair. A little rough around the edges. And Damian was exactly that. Which was deeply unfortunate. So I kept my distance. Until the night of the regional conference. Every year, our company sends a handful of us to this 2-day event in Columbus. Workshops during the day. Open bar networking at night. It's basically corporate summer camp with more alcohol and worse music. This time, it was me, our supervisor Linda, and of course Damian. The drive there was awkward. 3 hours in a rental SUV. Linda up front talking about quarterly goals. Damian in the back with me, knees brushing every time the car hit a bump. He didn't move his leg. Neither did I. By the time we checked into the hotel, I could already feel that weird electricity in the air. Like something was building, even if either of us wanted to admit it. The first night, after the workshops, everyone ended up at the hotel bar. It started normal. Beers. Small talk. Handshakes. The usual fake corporate charm. Damian doesn't usually drink much. At the office parties, he'll have 1 or 2 and then switch to water. That night, he was knocking back whiskey like he had something to prove. Slow down, I muttered at one point when he signaled the bartender again. He looked at me, eyes already a little glassy. Why? You my babysitter now, Donovan? No. Just don't want to carry you to your room later. He smirked. You wish. God. It was so stupid. So immature. But there was this tension in the way he said it. Not joking. Not fully serious. Just loaded. Around midnight, Linda bailed. Said she had an early breakfast meeting. That left me and Damian. Music was louder. The crowd thinner. The bartender more generous. At some point, we ended up in a booth in the corner. Just the two of us. He was leaning back, one arm stretched along the top of the seat behind me. Not touching. But close enough that I could feel the heat from him. You ever get tired of it? He asked suddenly. Tired of what? Being. He gestured vaguely at me. You know. I stiffened. Being gay? He nodded. I took a sip of my drink, buying time. No. I get tired of people asking me that, though. He stared at his glass. Swirled the whiskey around. Must be hard. It's only hard because people make it hard. He huffed out a laugh. Yeah, well, it's not exactly normal. There it was. I should have walked away. I should have shut it down. Instead, I leaned closer. Define normal. Damian. His jaw tightened. He looked at me, then really looked at me. And there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Confusion. Frustration. Something else. I just don't get how a guy can want another guy. He muttered. Doesn't make sense to me. Maybe you're thinking about it too much, I said quietly. His eyes snapped up to mine. I don't think about it. He shot back too quickly. Silence fell between us. Thick. Heavy. The music thumped in the background, bass vibrating through the booth. He leaned in a little, voice lower now. I'm not like that. I swallowed. I didn't say you were. He held my gaze. Way too long for a straight guy who didn't think about it. Then he did something that made my heart slam into my ribs. He said, You ever look at me like that at work? My throat went dry. Like what? Like you're looking at me right now. I didn't even realize I was staring until he pointed it out. I forced myself to lean back. You're drunk, answered the question. He wasn't slurring anymore. His voice had gone sharp. Intense. I could have lied. Instead, I said, Yeah. Sometimes. The air between us shifted. He didn't look angry. He didn't look disgusted. He looked shaken. Like I'd just confirmed something he'd been afraid to name. For a second, I thought he was going to get up and walk away. Instead, he reached for his glass and missed. Whiskey sloshed onto the table. Shit, he muttered, laughing under his breath. Okay. Maybe I am drunk. Yeah, I said softly. You are. He looked at me again. Slower this time. And that's when I noticed his hand. It wasn't reaching for his drink. It was resting on the seat between us. Close to my thigh. Close enough that if either of us moved an inch, I don't think either of us were breathing at that point. And that's when he said something that changed everything. Come upstairs with me. Not as a joke. Not with a smirk. Just quiet. Almost unsure. I felt my pulse in my ears. Damian. I just need to talk. He cut in quickly. That's it. I should have said no. I should have remembered every comment, every snide remark, every time he made me feel small in that office. But the look in his eyes wasn't cruel. It was scared. And curious. And maybe a little desperate. So I stood up. And followed the guy who didn't get gay people into the elevator. I had no idea that by the end of that night, he'd be looking at me like I was the only thing in the room he understood. The elevator ride was only 12 floors. It felt like 12 hours. We stood side by side, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat from his body through his suit jacket. The hotel lighting was too bright, too honest. I could see the tension in his jaw. The way he kept swallowing like he was trying to push something down. Neither of us spoke. The doors opened with a soft ding. He stepped out first. I followed. Halfway down the hallway, he slowed like he was reconsidering everything. For a second, I thought he might turn around and say, Forget it. Bad idea. Instead, he unlocked his room and pushed the door open. He didn't turn the lights on right away. Just walked in, tossed his keycard onto the desk, and ran both hands over his face. I stayed near the door. You sure this is a good idea? I asked quietly. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. No. That was honest, at least. The room was dim except for the city lights filtering through the curtains. He shrugged off his jacket, threw it onto the chair. His movements were sharper now. Restless. I don't. He stopped. Shook his head. I don't even know why I said that downstairs. Because you're drunk. Yeah, but drunk doesn't make you invent stuff. That landed heavier than I expected. He turned to face me fully then. Tie loosened. Top button undone. Hair slightly messed up from running his hands through it all night. He looked less like the confident, slightly arrogant guy from the office. More like someone cornered by his own thoughts. You said you look at me sometimes, he said. I didn't dodge it. I do. His throat moved when he swallowed. And you're not embarrassed? No. Why not? I shrugged slightly. You're attractive. I'm single. It's not that deep. But it was. And we both knew it. He walked closer. Not aggressively. Just slow. Measured. You think I'm attractive? He repeated, like he was testing how the words felt in his mouth. Yeah. He stopped about a foot away from me. Even after all the crap I've said? I held his gaze. You've said stupid things. Doesn't mean you're not still you. Something in his expression shifted at that. Guilt, maybe. He looked down at the floor. I didn't mean half of it. He muttered. Then why say it? His jaw clenched. Because it's easier to joke about something than deal with it. There it was. The room felt smaller suddenly. What are you dealing with, Damian? I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped even closer. Close enough that if I breathed in deeply, my chest would brush his. I've never. He exhaled slowly. I've never even thought about a guy like that. Not seriously. But? His eyes flicked up to mine. But I think about you. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was almost frustrated. Like he was annoyed at himself for admitting it. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. How long? I asked. He let out a shaky breath. Couple months. That lined up exactly with when the comments started getting sharper. More frequent. You ever wonder why I mess with you so much? He continued. Yeah. I said. Figured you were just an asshole. That actually made him laugh. A real one. I might still be. He admitted. But that's not why. Silence settled again. He looked at my mouth. Not subtle. Not quick. Just looked. Then he stepped back abruptly, running a hand through his hair again. This is messed up. He muttered. You work with me. We're not doing anything. I said carefully. He looked at me like that was the problem. That's the thing. He said quietly. I want to. The words hung there between us. Raw. Unfiltered. For a split second, I saw panic flash across his face like he wanted to grab the words back. But he didn't. He just stood there. Waiting. I took one slow step forward. If you don't want this, I said calmly, we stop. Right now. We walk away. Tomorrow, it's just work. Nothing changes. He searched my face. And if I do want it? My voice dropped. Then don't blame it on the alcohol. His breathing shifted. Slower. Deeper. I'm not blaming anything. He said. That was the moment. Not when he touched me. Not when we got closer. That was the moment everything tipped. He closed the distance himself. His hand came up like he wasn't even fully aware of it. Hesitated midair. Then settled on my waist. Firm. Warm. He froze after touching me like he expected lightning to strike. It didn't. The world didn't end. The only thing that changed was the way he looked at me. Not confused anymore. Just focused. You gonna freak out tomorrow? I asked quietly. He shook his head once. No. You sure? Another small shake. Then softer. I'm more scared you will. That caught me off guard. Why would I? Because I've been a jerk to you. I let out a small breath. You have. His lips twitched. But you're here, he said. I am. His thumb shifted slightly against my side. Barely moving. But deliberate. Tell me to stop, he said, voice lower now. I held his gaze. I'm not going to. That was all it took. He kissed me. And it wasn't hesitant. It wasn't sloppy drunk either. It was intense. Like he'd been holding it back for months and finally snapped. His hand tightened at my waist. Mine came up automatically, gripping his shirt. He made this low sound in his throat, half shock, half relief. When we pulled back, Just barely, his forehead rested against mine. Holy shit. He breathed. Still don't get gay people? I murmured. He let out a shaky laugh. No, he said honestly. But I think I'm starting to get you. And the way he said it? Like I wasn't just some concept. Like I was the only thing that made sense in that moment. But neither of us were ready for what that would mean once the sun came up. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because everything had already changed. After that first kiss, the energy in the room shifted from this sharp, electric tension into something quieter. Softer. Damian looked like he was trying to process 100 thoughts at once while still standing 2 inches from me. He kept staring at me like I might disappear. That wasn't weird for you? He asked after a minute. It was unexpected, I admitted. But not weird. He nodded slowly, like that answer mattered more than he wanted to admit. We ended up sitting on the edge of his bed, side by side. Not touching at first. Just existing in the aftermath of a moment neither of us had planned. Outside, the city was alight, headlights moving like streams of light between buildings, distant sirens, the hum of traffic 12 floors below. Inside, it felt like the world had narrowed to just us. I always thought this was something other people dealt with, he said quietly. Not me. What part? I asked. The questioning. The confusion. He rubbed his palms together, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before. I had everything figured out. Girls, work, gym, routine. Simple. And now it's not simple. He let out a breath. No. I leaned back on my hands, looking at him. Simple isn't always honest. He glanced over, studying me again. You make it sound easy. It's not, I said. But fighting yourself is harder. That hit him. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped slightly, like he'd been holding tension there for months. He nudged my knee with his. So what now, Donovan? He asked. You the expert here. I laughed softly. I'm not an expert. But usually after a kiss, people either panic or they talk. And which one am I doing? I smiled. Little of both. That earned me a quiet chuckle. A comfortable silence followed, the kind that doesn't feel awkward, just full. Eventually he spoke again. You know what messed with me the most? What? The fact that you never reacted. His eyes stayed on mine. I'd say something dumb at work, expecting you to get mad or call me out, and you just shrugged it off. I shrugged now, mirroring my past self. I've learned not every comment deserves my energy. Still, he muttered. I was trying to get a reaction. I know. His eyebrows lifted. You knew? Damian, I said gently. You're not subtle. That made him laugh again, shaking his head. God. That's embarrassing. It's human. He felt quiet after that, gaze drifting down to his hands. I think I was hoping you'd prove me wrong, he admitted. About what? About what I thought this meant. His voice lowered. That if I felt something, it didn't automatically change who I was. I leaned a little closer. It doesn't. His eyes lifted. You're still Damian. Just more honest Damian. He held my gaze for a long moment, like he was weighing those words carefully. Then, slowly, he reached over and laced his fingers with mine. The gesture was simple. But the way his breath caught told me it felt monumental to him. This is new, he said quietly. I figured. He looked at our hands. Feels normal though, he added after a second, almost surprised. I squeezed his fingers lightly. Most things do once you stop fighting them. He exhaled, long and steady, like that sentence released something inside him. We stayed like that for a while, hands linked, shoulders brushing, talking about everything and nothing. Childhood stories. Bad relationships. Career plans. The kind of conversation that makes time blur. At some point, he lay back against the pillows, pulling me down beside him without breaking contact. The lights were off now, the room lit only by the glow from the window. You gonna regret this? He murmured into the darkness. I turned my head toward him. No. Are you? He was quiet long enough that I thought he might not answer. Then he said, No. I'm just scared of how much I don't regret it. That honesty settled warmly in my chest. We drifted into silence after that. Not asleep. Just close. His thumb absent-mindedly tracing slow patterns over my knuckles. My shoulder tucked against his arm. The steady rhythm of his breathing gradually slowing. For the first time since I'd known him, Damian felt calm. Not guarded. Not defensive. Just a guy lying next to someone he trusted. Right before sleep finally pulled him under, he murmured something so quiet I almost missed it. Donovan? Yeah? I don't hate gay people. I smiled into the darkness. Good start. A pause. Then softer. I think I hated how much I wanted you to notice me. That confession lingered in the quiet room long after his breathing evened out. And as I lay there beside the coworker who'd spent months pushing me away only to pull me closer, one thought kept looping in my head. Morning was going to be complicated. Because kisses in hotel rooms are one thing. But walking back into the office together? That was a completely different kind of reality. And neither of us were ready for how hard pretending nothing happened would be. Morning came way too fast. The first thing I noticed was the warmth. Damian's arm was still draped over me, heavy and relaxed, like he'd forgotten every rule he'd spent months building around himself. His face was turned toward mine, hair slightly messy, mouth parted just enough to show he was deeply asleep. For a second, I just watched him. No tension. No guarded expression. No sarcastic smirk. Just Damian. And it hit me how different this version of him felt. I shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, but his arm tightened instinctively, pulling me closer. A soft sound left him, somewhere between a sigh and a mumble. That small, unconscious reaction did something to my chest. Because it wasn't confusion. It wasn't hesitation. It was comfort. Still, reality was creeping in with the morning light leaking around the curtains. Work. Colleagues. Linda. The 3-hour drive back. I was debating whether to move when his eyes opened. For a split second, there was pure disorientation. Then recognition. Then panic. He sat up fast. Morning, I said gently. He ran both hands through his hair, staring at the floor like he just remembered an embarrassing story from childhood. Okay, he muttered. Okay. I waited. He looked at me. That happened? I smiled faintly. Yeah. Silence stretched for a moment, while he processed. You still here? He said. You invited me. Right. He exhaled slowly. Right. There was that tension again, not rejection, just the weight of reality settling back onto his shoulders. I sat up beside him. You regret it? He looked at me instantly. No. The answer came too fast to be fake. He frowned slightly afterward, like he surprised himself with the certainty. I just. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know what this means now. That's fair. He glanced at me. You seem calm. I've done this part before, I said. The figuring it out phase. He let out a quiet laugh. Guess I'm late to the party. There's no timeline. That seemed to ease him a little. He swung his legs off the bed, elbows on his knees, staring out toward the window. I spent months convincing myself I didn't feel anything, he admitted. Thought if I joked enough, it'd just go away. I leaned back against the headboard. Did it? He glanced over. No. A small smile tugged at my lips. He noticed. Don't look so smug, he muttered. I'm not smug. You're definitely smug. I laughed, and the sound softened something between us. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted into something manageable. Eventually he stood, pacing once across the room before stopping in front of me. I don't want this to be some drunk mistake story, he said. It doesn't have to be. But I also don't know what I'm ready for. That's okay too. He studied my face carefully, like he was searching for disappointment. You're not mad? He asked. Why would I be? Because I can't give you some clear answer right now. I shrugged lightly. I'm not asking for one. That seemed to catch him off guard. You're patient, he said. I'm realistic. A quiet moment passed before he spoke again. I meant what I said last night, he added. About thinking about you. My heartbeat ticked up, but I kept my voice steady. I know. He stepped closer. I notice you in meetings. When you laugh with people. When you get that focused look working on something. He shook his head slightly. It's annoying. Why? Because I'd catch myself watching and then get mad about it. That confession felt more intimate than anything physical. And now? I asked. He held my gaze. Now I'm just watching. The way he said it wasn't objectifying. It was curious. Gentle. He sat beside me again, shoulders brushing. So what do we do when we get back? He asked quietly. That was the question hanging over everything. We don't have to define anything today, I said. We just don't pretend it didn't happen. He nodded slowly. I can do that. A pause. Then softer. Can we keep talking though? I smiled. I'd like that. Relief washed across his face so visibly it almost made me laugh. Good, he said. Because I don't think I can go back to ignoring you. That might make meetings interesting. He smirked. They were already interesting. The ease between us returned in small pieces after that shared coffee from the lobby, quiet conversation while packing, the occasional brush of shoulders that neither of us pulled away from. Nothing dramatic. Just two people adjusting to a new version of each other. But as we checked out and walked toward the parking lot together, I noticed something subtle. Damian wasn't walking ahead like he usually did. He stayed beside me. And when our hands brushed briefly between steps, he didn't jerk away. He just kept walking. By the time we reached the car, I realized something important. The hardest part wasn't the kiss. It wasn't the confusion. It was the possibility. Because now we both knew what was there. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. As Damian unlocked the car and glanced over at me with that same quiet, searching look, I had a feeling the real story wasn't what happened in that hotel room. It was what would happen once we got home. And whether two coworkers who weren't supposed to feel anything could figure out what this new thing between them actually was. The drive back felt different. Not awkward. Not overly chatty. Just aware. Linda sat in the passenger seat scrolling through emails, occasionally talking about workshop takeaways and next quarter projections. From the outside, it probably looked like a completely normal car ride. But in the back seat, everything had shifted. Damian and I sat side by side again, knees brushing every time the road curved. This time, neither of us pretended it wasn't happening. At one point, Linda turned around mid-conversation. You two survived the networking night? She asked with a smile. Barely, I said. Damian chuckled. Donovan talks too much. Linda laughed and turned back around, satisfied. But the moment she faced forward again, Damian leaned slightly toward me. That's ironic, he murmured. You were the quiet one last night. I felt my lips twitch. That's because you were having an existential crisis. He smirked, eyes on the road ahead. Still might be. But there was no panic in his voice. Just honesty. We drove like that for another hour, small comments, shared looks, the kind of quiet communication that doesn't need words. Eventually, Linda dozed off. And the moment her breathing evened out, Damian's hand shifted. Not grabbing mine. Just resting between us on the seat. Palm up. An offering. My chest tightened slightly at how simple and careful it was. I let my fingers slide into his. He inhaled sharply, almost inaudible. But he didn't look at me. Just kept his gaze forward, thumbs slowly brushing against my knuckles like he was testing the reality of it. We stayed like that for nearly 20 minutes. No words. Just contact. It wasn't dramatic. No grand declaration. No rush of passion. It was quieter than that. It was trust. Eventually Linda stirred, and Damian's hand slipped away smoothly, like it had never been there. But the warmth lingered in my palm long after. By the time we pulled into the office parking lot, the air had shifted back into something more professional. Car doors closed. Bags grabbed. Phones checked. Reality resumed. But as we walked toward the building, Damian slowed his pace until we were slightly behind Linda. "Coffee after work?" he asked under his breath. I glanced at him. "Coffee?" He shrugged lightly. "Baby steps." I smiled. "Yeah. Coffee." Relief flickered across his face again, that same subtle expression I was starting to recognize. Inside, the office looked exactly the same as always. Fluorescent lights. Low chatter. The smell of printer ink and burnt coffee. But walking through it felt like stepping into a place that suddenly held secrets. At our desks, everything returned to routine. Emails. Slack messages. Meetings. Yet the awareness between us hummed constantly beneath the surface. During the morning check-in, Damian sat across from me like usual. But instead of avoiding my gaze or teasing, he watched me speak with this quiet attentiveness. At one point our eyes met. He didn't look away. Just gave the smallest smile. It was so subtle no one else would have noticed. But I did. And it felt more intimate than the kiss. The day crawled. Work always does when you're waiting for something afterward. Around 4:57 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Damian, still on for coffee?" I glanced up. He was already looking at me from across the office. I texted back. "Me, yeah?" At 5 sharp, we walked out together. No announcement. No hesitation. Just two coworkers leaving at the same time. The cafe down the street was quiet, warm lighting and low music creating a soft buffer from the outside world. We grabbed drinks and found a small table near the window. For a minute neither of us spoke. Not awkward. Just settling. "This feels different sober," he admitted finally. "Good different or bad different?" He met my eyes. "Real." That word sat between us. He wrapped his hands around his cup, staring at the steam. "I kept expecting to wake up today and feel embarrassed," he said. "Or like I crossed some line I can't come back from. And I just felt curious." I smiled softly. "That's a good place to be." He nodded. "I don't know what label fits me," he added. "Or if I even need one right now." "You don't." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "But I do know this," he continued. "I like being around you." My heartbeat ticked up. "I like talking to you. I like noticing things about you." He gave a small, almost shy smile. "And apparently I like holding your hand in company vehicles." I laughed. "That's very specific." He grinned. Then his expression softened. "I'm scared I'll mess this up," he admitted. "You might," I said honestly. That surprised him. "But so might I," I added. "That's how this works." He exhaled slowly, absorbing that. Outside, evening traffic passed in soft streaks of light. Inside, time felt suspended. After a moment, he reached across the table. Not hiding it. Not overthinking it. Just resting his fingers lightly against mine. "I don't hate gay people," he said quietly, echoing his late-night confession. I smiled. "I know." He squeezed my fingers. "I just needed to meet one who wouldn't give up on me." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. And sitting there in that quiet cafe, hand in his, I realized something. The story was never about Damian hating gay people. It was about Damian being afraid of himself. And now that fear was cracking open slowly, carefully revealing someone thoughtful, awkward, curious, and unexpectedly gentle. But as we left the cafe and stepped into the cool evening air together, a new question started forming in my mind. Because curiosity and quiet coffee dates were one thing. But feelings? Feelings had a way of escalating. And I had a growing suspicion that Damian wasn't the only one starting to fall into something neither of us had planned. Something that would soon demand more than curiosity, more than coffee, and definitely more than baby steps. Coffee turned into a routine. Not officially. Not labeled. But 3 days later, Damian texted me again at 4:58. "Damian, you busy?" And somehow that became us walking out together almost every evening. At work, things stayed professional. No touching. No obvious flirting. Just this undercurrent. But outside the office? It was different. We talked more. Not just surface level stuff. Real things. His dad. Strict. Old school. The kind of guy who thinks masculinity comes in one flavor only. His high school girlfriend. 3 years together. "I thought that's what I was supposed to do," he admitted. The way he'd felt something was off for a while but couldn't name it. "I always figured attraction was just automatic," he said one night as we sat in his truck in the parking lot after coffee. "Like you see someone, you feel it, end of story." "And now?" I asked. He looked at me. "Now I think maybe it's more about the person than the category." That line stayed with me. Because the way he said it wasn't defensive. It was reflective. Careful. We hadn't kissed again yet. Not because we didn't want to. But because Damian was moving like someone learning how to walk again, testing balance before taking bigger steps. I respected that. Still, the tension was building. One Friday evening, a few weeks after the conference, he asked, "You want to come over?" I paused. "Your place?" He nodded. "Just hang out. Watch something. I don't want this to always be coffee and parking lots." That felt like another step. Bigger. "Okay," I said. His apartment was cleaner than I expected. Minimal. Organized. Everything in its place. It fit him. We ordered takeout. Sat on his couch. Put on some random action movie either of us were really watching. At first, we sat with space between us. Then less space. Then his knee pressed against mine. Then didn't move. About halfway through the movie, he muted the TV. I looked over. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at me. "You're patient," he said again. "You keep saying that. Because I don't think I deserve it." That caught me off guard. "Why wouldn't you?" He leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Because if this were reversed, if you were the one figuring stuff out and I'd been the one making comments for months." He shook his head. "I don't know if I'd give me this kind of grace." I studied him for a moment. "You're not your worst moments," I said quietly. "And you've been trying." He looked at me again. "Am I obvious?" "Yes." That made him laugh. But then his expression softened. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. There it was. The real fear. "Then don't lie to me," I replied. "And don't use me to experiment if you're not emotionally here." His jaw tightened slightly. "I'm here." "You sure?" He held my gaze steadily. "I'm not confused about wanting you anymore," he said. "I'm confused about what that means long term." That's different. That honesty mattered. It told me he wasn't running from it. Just trying to understand it. Slowly, he reached out. This time there was no hesitation. His hand cupped my jaw gently. "Can I?" he asked. That small question, that consent, told me everything about how far he'd already come. "Yes." The kiss this time wasn't explosive like the hotel. It was deliberate. Slower. He moved like someone paying attention. Learning. His thumb brushed lightly along my cheek. My hand settled against his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heartbeat under my palm. He pulled back slightly, eyes searching mine. "That feels right," he murmured. "It does." He leaned his forehead against mine. "I don't feel like I'm betraying myself," he said quietly. "I feel like I'm finally not pretending." That line hit deep. Because it wasn't about me being some exception. It was about him being honest with himself. We stayed close like that for a long time. Talking in between kisses. Laughing when he overthought something. At one point, he groaned and buried his face against my shoulder. I can't believe I spent months trying to argue my way out of this. I ran a hand through his hair. You were arguing with yourself. He lifted his head. Yeah, he admitted. And I was losing. The night didn't rush. No pressure. No dramatic escalation. Just closeness. By the time I left his apartment, it felt different from the hotel. More grounded. More intentional. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. Damian, text me when you get home. I smiled. On the drive, I thought about how far he'd come in just a few weeks. From defensive jokes in the break room to holding my face like I was something fragile. But growth isn't linear. And even as things deepened between us, I knew there was still one major hurdle ahead. Because liking me privately was one thing. But being honest publicly? That was another level entirely. And sooner or later, that conversation was coming. The conversation came on a Tuesday. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just inevitable. We were in his kitchen. He was leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, watching me attempt to cook something more complicated than pasta. You're overthinking it, he said. I'm not. You are. It's chicken, not a chemistry experiment. I shot him a look. Some of us weren't born grilling. He smirked. The ease between us had grown natural over the past month. Movie nights. Grocery runs. A few stolen kisses in parking garages. One lazy Sunday morning that turned into breakfast in bed and him absent-mindedly tracing circles on my back like he'd been doing it his whole life. But outside of his apartment? Nothing. At work, we were still careful. Not cold. Just neutral. He didn't make comments anymore. Not even jokes. But he also didn't look at me the way he did at home. And I'd been patient. I really had. But that Tuesday, something shifted. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from a coworker. You and Damian seem tight lately? I locked my phone. Damian noticed. What? He asked. I hesitated. Nothing. He frowned slightly. Donovan. I set the knife down. They're starting to notice, I said calmly. His shoulders stiffened almost immediately. Notice what? That we leave together. That we take lunch at the same time sometimes. I met his eyes. That something's different. He went quiet. Not angry. Not defensive. Just quiet. And that silence told me more than any reaction would have. I'm not asking you to come out at work tomorrow, I said carefully. I just need to know where your head's at. He looked at the floor. Then at me. I don't want to hide you, he said. But, he exhaled slowly. But I don't know how to not hide it yet. That honesty hurt more than I expected. Not because it was malicious. But because it was real. I crossed my arms lightly. Are you ashamed? His head snapped up. No. Then what are you afraid of? He ran a hand over his face. My dad. The guys at work. The shift. His voice tightened. I've been one version of myself for 30 years. And this version? I asked quietly. He looked at me. This one feels more honest, he admitted. But it also feels exposed. That word hung heavy. I stepped closer. I can't be someone you compartmentalize, I said gently. I won't force you. But I won't be a secret forever. His jaw clenched slightly. I'm not trying to make you a secret. But that's what it feels like. Silence. The kind that makes your chest tight. He walked toward the window, staring out at the parking lot below. I hate that this is hard, he muttered. It shouldn't be. For you, it's new, I said. For me, it's not. He nodded slowly. I know. That's when I realized something. This wasn't about him denying me. It was about him grieving the version of himself he thought he was. And that takes time. Still, time doesn't mean indefinite. I stepped behind him, not touching, just close. I don't need a public announcement, I said. I just need to know I matter outside these walls. He turned around slowly. You do? Then show me. The vulnerability in his face almost undid me. I'm trying, he said quietly. I see that. We stood there for a long moment. Then he did something small but significant. He reached for his phone. What are you doing? I asked. He unlocked it. Opened his messages. Typed. Then showed me the screen. Damian, to coworker group chat. Anyone else grabbing drinks Friday? Donovan and I might stop by. I blinked. That's it? I asked. He nodded. It's not a declaration. But it's not hiding either. It wasn't. It was subtle. But it was movement. And with Damian, movement mattered. You okay with that? He asked. I looked at him. The guy who used to roll his eyes at Pride Month. Now casually including me in his social circle without separating us. Yeah, I said softly. That's a start. Relief washed over his face. He stepped forward, cupping my face like he had that first night on his couch. I don't want to lose you because I'm scared, he said. You won't, I replied. Unless you stop moving forward. He nodded. I won't. Friday came faster than expected. We walked into the bar together. Not touching. But not distant either. A few coworkers were already there. There were glances. Curious looks. One raised eyebrow. But no comments. Damian ordered drinks. When he handed mine to me, his fingers lingered. Just slightly. And when one of the guys joked, You two dating now or what? With a half laugh. Damian didn't flinch. He didn't joke it off. He didn't deflect. He just looked at me for half a second. Then said calm and steady. Yeah. We are. The world didn't explode. No one yelled. A couple surprised looks. One awkward nod. Someone muttered, Oh. Cool. And that was it. But the way Damian's shoulders straightened after he said it? Like he just stepped through something. Later that night, when we stepped outside for air, he looked at me with a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. That wasn't as bad as I thought, he admitted. No, I said softly. It wasn't. He shook his head slightly, almost laughing at himself. I spent months fighting something that feels this simple. I smiled. Sometimes the hardest part is just saying it out loud. He reached for my hand. This time, in public. No hesitation. No scanning the street. Just lacing his fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, I realized something important. Damian never actually hated gay people. He hated the idea that he might be one of them. And once he stopped fighting that, there was nothing left between us but honesty. And the quiet, steady realization that what started as tension had turned into something real. Something chosen. And something neither of us were pretending about anymore. It didn't turn into some dramatic office scandal. No HR meetings. No whispered confrontations in conference rooms. A few surprised looks. A couple awkward jokes that died quickly when Damian didn't laugh along. And then? Life moved forward. But something inside him had shifted permanently. The first time he reached for my hand in the parking lot after work without checking who was around, I felt it. The first time he introduced me to someone as my boyfriend, instead of just saying my name, I really felt it. It happened about 2 months after that Friday at the bar. We were at a friend of a friend's birthday thing. Loud backyard party. People from different circles. Some I knew. Some he knew. One of his old gym buddies showed up, the type who used to laugh at the same jokes Damian once made. I watched the interaction carefully. There was a split second of tension when the guy clocked us standing a little too close. Then he grinned. Damn, man. Didn't see that coming. Old Damian might have deflected. Might have made it into a joke. Instead, Damian slid his arm around my waist casually and said, Yeah. Me either. No apology in his tone. No defensiveness. Just truth. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't temporary. Later that night, we ended up back at his apartment, windows open, city air drifting in. He was sitting on the edge of his bed unlacing his shoes, quiet in that thoughtful way he gets when he's processing something. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up at me. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Just thinking. Dangerous." He smirked faintly. "I used to think being gay meant something very specific," he admitted. "Like it came with a whole personality change. Different voice. Different interests. Different everything. And?" He shrugged. "I'm still me." I walked over and stood between his knees. "You were always you." He rested his hands lightly on my hips. "I wasted a lot of time being scared of something that just feels normal." I brushed my thumb along his jaw. "Fear's loud," I said. "Truth's usually quieter." He looked up at me like he was memorizing my face. "You didn't push me," he said. "You didn't shame me for being behind. You just stayed." "I wasn't staying out of charity," I replied softly. "I stayed because I saw who you were trying to be." His grip tightened slightly, grounding. "I was such an idiot at the beginning," he muttered. "Yeah," I said lightly. "You were." He huffed a laugh, leaning forward until his forehead rested against my stomach. "But you were an honest idiot by the end." He leaned back and pulled me down onto the bed with him. The quiet between us now felt completely different from that first night in the hotel. No confusion. No internal war. Just warmth. After a minute, he spoke again. "You know what the weirdest part is?" "What?" "I don't feel like I switched teams." He looked at the ceiling thoughtfully. "I feel like I just stopped lying to myself." That was it. That was the real transformation. It was never about labels. It was about permission. Permission to want what he wanted. Permission to not fit the script he'd been handed. A few weeks later, something happened that sealed everything for me. It was small. But it meant everything. We were back at work, just a regular Tuesday. Someone made an offhand comment in the break room, not even directed at us, just one of those casual, outdated jokes people toss around without thinking. Before I could react, Damian spoke up. "Hey," he said evenly. "Not cool." The room went quiet. The guy mumbled something and backed off. And that was it. No speech. No dramatic confrontation. Just a boundary. Later, when we were alone, I nudged him. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah," he said simply. "I did." The weight of that hit deep. Because once upon a time, he was the one making those comments. Growth isn't loud. It's consistent. It's subtle shifts that add up. That night, as we lay in bed, limbs tangled, his breathing slow against my neck, he murmured something that brought everything full circle. "You know," he said sleepily, "I really thought I hated gay people." I smiled against his shoulder. "You just hated that you wanted one." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Yeah." A pause. Then softer. "Guess I just needed the right guy to drink with." I shook my head. "It wasn't the whiskey." He tightened his arms around me. "No," he agreed. "It was you." And lying there in the quiet, I realized something simple and steady. He didn't change because of one drunken night. He changed because he let himself be honest. Because he stopped fighting curiosity. Because he chose vulnerability over ego. And in the end, the guy who once said he didn't get gay people? He didn't need to. He just needed to get himself. And somehow, in the middle of all that confusion and growth, he got me too.